the world economy of the future had a hidden engine, there's a strong chance that that engine will be found in Africa. Not Silicon Valley, not Beijing, not Brussels, but Africa. And yet, most people still talk about Africa as if it's standing outside the future, waiting to be invited in. That may be one of the biggest misconceptions of the 21st century. Because if you look at the forces that will shape the future, that is population, energy transition, critical minerals, urban expansion, trade routes, and new consumer markets, Africa is not on the sidelines. It's close to the center of them all, and that changes everything. So here is the big question. What if the future world economy does not just include Africa? What if it actually depends on Africa? This is what we are going to unpack today. Because the more you look at the data, the geography, the global power shift, the clearer one thing becomes. Africa may become the most important continent of the 21st century. Let's start with something simple. When people think about global power, they often think about military strength, giant economies, advanced technologies. But before any of that comes something that is very basic, and that is people. This is where Africa becomes impossible to ignore. Right now, Africa is home to 1.5 billion people. But what matters even more is where this number is leading to. Africa's population is expected to rise dramatically over the coming decades, reaching about 2.5 billion people by 2050. Just take a second to process that. That means that within one generation, 1 out of every 4 people on Earth will be from the African continent or will be African. By the end of the century, that share could even become larger. Now, compare that to what's happening to other parts of the world. Japan is aging, Italy is aging, South Korea is aging, even China is aging. In many of the world's largest economies, birth rates are dropping and the workforce is beginning to shrink. This matters because the world economy does not run on headlines. They run on workers, run on consumers, they run on workforce, entrepreneurs, engineers, builders, teachers, and problem solvers. Africa has what much of these developed countries is running short of, which is youth. In many African countries, the median age is 20 years. This is not a small detail. It's a massive strategic advantage if those young people are educated, connected, healthy, and economically powerful. And history shows what can happen when this combination comes together. Think about East Asia. A few decades ago, countries like South Korea were still developing and much poorer than they are today. But with education, industrial policy, infrastructure, and export growth, they transformed into major global economies. Yes, Africa is not East Asia and it may not follow the same pattern, but the lesson still matters a lot. A young population can either be a crisis or a superpower, and that depends on what happens next. But here is where the story gets even bigger. Because Africa is not just important because of the people that live there, it's also important because of what lives beneath it. You want to understand why all these global powers are suddenly paying more attention to Africa, then think about the mineral resources that is found in Africa. Listen, every time someone talks about electric vehicles, renewable energy, battery storage, smartphones, artificial intelligence, hardware, and modern infrastructure, whether they realize it or not, they are also talking about the materials that are used to build all these things that I just mentioned. And one thing is that these materials are found in Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo produces most of the world's cobalt, and this is a mineral that is being essential in many lithium-ion batteries. South Africa is one of the world's leading producers of platinum group metals, which are used in industrial processes, catalytic technologies, and parts of the clean energy economy. Guinea has some of the world's largest bauxite reserves, and bauxite is important for aluminium production. Zambia is a major copper producer, and copper is important for power grids, electric vehicles, and renewable energy systems. Namibia has major uranium resources. Zimbabwe has significant lithium deposits. All this means that the technology of the future is deeply rooted in Africa. Now, here is the paradox. For years, it has been turned into a way to make it that Africa needed the world. But increasingly, the world needs Africa. Think about the global push for electric vehicles that is coming up every day. Yes, a car country in Europe can design the vehicle. A battery company in Asia can assemble the cell. A software firm in America can build the operating system. Yes, but if the minerals needed to build all these are not available, the supply chain breaks. And that is exactly why Africa matters. Now, let's talk about another key point of why the world needs Africa. And this is talking about the geography of Africa, the location of Africa in the map of the world, because geography still shapes future. Open the world map and look at the position of Africa carefully. It sits between Europe, Asia, and America. It borders both the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. It connects major sea routes and it sits near some of the busiest shipping corridors of the world. That alone makes it strategically important. But then again, there is a Suez Canal. A huge part of the global trade passes through the Red Sea and this Suez route. When that corridor is ever disrupted, it affects travel fast, shipping delays, there is rising freight costs, supply chain chaos, and inflationary pressure. The world saw this clearly when major disruptions hit global shipping routes. This is one reason why outside powers are competing for influence across the African continent. China has financed roads, ports, rail lines, and public infrastructure in multiple African countries. The United States has increased diplomatic and commercial engagement. Even Turkey has expanded its footprint significantly over the last 2 decades, including airline connectivity and business ties. The Gulf states are investing in ports, logistics, agriculture, and strategic assets. Russia continues to pursue security and political relationship in several African countries. This is not charity, this is strategy. Countries do not compete for influence in places that do not matter. They compete where the future value is high. And Africa's value, geographical, economic, and strategic, is rising. But there's another part of the story that people often miss. When many outsiders think about Africa, they still think almost entirely about extraction, mineral, oil, gold, cobalt, copper, raw materials. But that is only one version of Africa's future. The more important story may be what Africans are building above the ground. Let's look at some growth of some African cities. Take Lagos as an example. Lagos is already one of the world's largest urban economies in its own right. Yes, it's chaotic, it's imperfect, and overcrowded in places, but it's also commercially alive, digitally active, and entrepreneurial at an extraordinary scale. From fintech startups to entertainment to logistics to e-commerce, Lagos shows what happens when young population meets the urban energy. Or take Nairobi, which is Kenya's capital. It became one of the best known tech hubs in Africa because of mobile money innovation. And this brings us to one of the best known tech hubs, one of the most powerful real-life examples of African innovation, which is M-Pesa. When M-Pesa launched in Kenya, it helped millions of people send and receive money through using mobile phones, including many people that even had difficulties with the traditional banking system. That was not just a clever app, it was a structural innovation. It solved real problems in a local context and ended up influencing how the world thinks about digital finance. In many developed economies, digital payment grew on top of the existing banking system. In many parts of Africa, mobile finance leaps over traditional banking systems. This leapfrogging effect matters. It shows that Africa does not have to copy every stage of Western development to build modern systems. And this is where a lot of people underestimate the continent. They imagine Africa as only catching up. Now, none of this means that the road ahead is easy. Africa faces real and significant challenges. In some countries, electricity remains unreliable. Transport infrastructure is still inadequate. Political instability disrupts growth. Corruption weakens institutions. Conflict continues in parts of the continent. Climate change is intensifying. Droughts, floods, and food insecurity in vulnerable regions. Inequality remains a major issue where economies are growing. A young population without jobs can become a source of instability. Africa will not just thrive simply because of its resources and the demographics. Those assets have to be converted into productive systems, which includes education, power, infrastructure, transport, industry, institutions, and jobs. That is the real test. Still, there are reasons the long-term picture remains compelling. One major reason is that change is already happening, even if it is unevenly. There are 54 countries in Africa, different political systems, different economic structures, different opportunities, and different risks. One of the oldest mistakes is treating Africa as if it were one country. It is not. This future will be shaped through many different paths. Some countries will move faster than the others. Some sectors will grow faster than the others. Some regions will struggle, while others will surge ahead. That is normal. It's also how development works in a real world. Now, step back and look at the global implications. If Africa succeeds, not perfectly but meaningfully, the effects will be worldwide. The consumer economy, new companies will emerge, new cultural exports will spread, new manufacturing centers could develop, new political alliances will shape international institutions. That is why the future of Africa Africa is not just an African issue, it is a global issue. If Africa struggles, the world will feel that too. If Africa rises, the world will gain. Because the biggest mistake now will not be underestimating Africa's problem, it may be underestimating Africa's importance. And if that happens, the world will be caught reacting to a future you should have seen coming. If you're passionate about African stories, African growth, African innovation, do well to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Stay tuned and see you in the next video.